Welcome to the latest episode of Branding the Experience, where we discuss ways where we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Branding the Experience, and I was just watching an interview that I had the distinct pleasure to do recently with a fellow author and thought leader named John Kurth, who wrote a book called What Are Your Words Wearing? And we talk a lot about branding and being very, very particular on the words that we use in the sales process. Let's listen. I'm here with John Kurth, owner of Syntactic Sales Scripting. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on the program today.
Happy to have you. Well, yeah, for quite a while, I've been envious of the process and the system that you put in place for say not just scripting, but for a system in having sales success. And as the name of the show is Branding the Experience, I know that you brand the sales experience for your clients to their customers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your program and your system?
One of the things is when you're branding the experience, you have to have the language that supports that. So many times there are silos in companies. There's the marketing side and there's the sales side, and the marketing does a great job on the marketing side of it, but the language doesn't translate over into the sales language that is helping people to convert customers into making money. I'll just give you an example. We're all familiar with McDonald's. We at least eaten at McDonald's at least once.
I know I have.
Yeah, me too. They always ask you, do you want fries with that?
Right.
That is a script that is a sales language that literally adds millions of dollars to the bottom line. So I often see with companies that may have done a good job with their branding experience, but the translation of the image and everything else is not translating into the language. And that's a problem. We've all had experiences where you said something didn't feel right. Well, you talk about in your book about you went to a sports bar and they said you could watch any game you want and they wouldn't let you do it. That was a disconnect between the brand image that they were talking about, and then it wasn't translated into the language. And of course, you're being a marketing professional, you put that up on that right away. But for other people, it'd be like, well, something didn't feel right. I just didn't like it there, because it's more of a gut feeling when you don't see it. When it's not done well, you notice its absence more than its presence.
Sure. And thank you for calling me a professional. That's the first time in 35 episodes I've gotten somebody to call me that on air, so perfect.
Well, you are. I mean, you've written your B plus C plus S formula, and with that, you talk about the brand drivers, the brand conveyors, and the organizational drivers.
Right.
And that's your iceberg principle, and the scripting impacts all three layers.
It does, and I've had the pleasure of having a couple authors like you and I on this show in the past, and I love talking to fellow authors. One, because we get so much great thought leadership on the show, and two, it's only a fellow author that could understand, how hard it is to write one of these suckers. I mean, one of these days on the show, I'm going to have to talk about the chapter that I wrote that got deleted. But so you understand the pain in putting this together. And I want the audience to see that I actually have some notes on here. I actually did read John's book, which is What Are Your Words Wearing? Tell me a little bit about how you came up with the title for this book, as well as your sales scripting process.
Okay, well, part of it is there needs to be, we talk about congruency.
Right.
You have to be congruent with your marketing and your branding. You also have to be congruent with your selling.
Right.
But that comes through with your language. I love the digital age. We're on the digital age. That's great. But people have lost the power of their language. And let's talk about incongruency. If your doctor's dropping F-bombs, that would be incongruent.
Right.
So what are your words wearing? How to make your sales communication more comprehensive, substantial, and precise. Comprehensive, they have to know the core elements of what you're talking about. Substantial, there's got to be benefits in the language to them so they can make a decision to buy. And precise, people don't have time to waste. Your presentation needs to be long enough to make the sale and then stop. So many people talk themselves out of a sale. So many people, trust and rapport is important. That's like, oh yeah, we're like old friends from high school. Well, did he buy from you? No. Did you ask him to buy from you? No. Well, there you go.
Right. Right.
So the thing is, with the language, it needs to be authentic to who you are and authentic to your industry, because otherwise you're winging it, and when you wing it, you get winged results. That's why working with my clients, it's such a collaborative process, because you understand your industry better than I do, but I understand the scripting language better than you do. Now I'm talking about scripting. All scripting is words in sequence that have meaning. So if you're talking and making sense, you're using scripts. If you're talking and not making sense, you're talking in gibberish. Mumbo Dog makes banana patch, doesn't make any sense, it's gibberish.
Actually, it makes a ton of sense to me, John.
Well, maybe if you drink a lot, then maybe it might make more sense.
Well, my drink is actually over there, and that is my first one that I haven't gotten to yet.
But the point being is your language is either moving people towards making a buying decision or it's pushing them away. There's very little middle ground. There's few neutral words in English like the and. Right. You'd be shocked at some of the language. I go into clients that I know they're investing in their marketing, but when I hear the phone ring, I am absolutely appalled, because the business owner is investing in all this marketing that they need to do, hopefully getting the B plus C plus S formula in place. The phone's ringing, great, the marketing is working, somebody's coming in the door, the marketing is working, and that's when the sales starts. And that's where there's those breakdowns. You just get absolutely, I get appalled, like, do you realize what he just said to that customer? That customer who could be a lifelong customer is never coming back, and they're probably telling 7 more people how bad it was.
Exactly. You know, in all honesty, before I really met you, I was almost, animately is probably too strong a word, but what, I was against scripts. And doing consulting and even some sales training, I never advocated scripts. You know, I wanted it to be personable, and I wanted it to be based on the culture.
Right.
But frankly, you know, after my first meeting with you, and I remember succinctly, you asked me a question, which I know you're going to remember. John asked me, who's your favorite actor? And it happens to be Clint Eastwood. Okay. Which I answered, and then you asked, you know that he's reading from a script or using a script when he's acting in the movie? And I said, yes. And he said, do you care? And I said, no, not really. And it got me to change my paradigm and my way of thinking. And I thought, you know, I actually been using scripts for 20 years. Every presentation that I've ever done, regardless of whether it was the first time or I'm doing it for the 35th time, you know, I'm taking the slides and I'm writing notes. And even though I have it in front of me, and as a script, I may not be looking at it and reading from it, what it's done is it's programmed my mind to where I already have, in essence, a formula in my mind, and my mind allows me to ad-lib from a foundation, not just ad-lib from space, from the cloud, which is, I believe, what you're trying to get at with your clients.
A couple things, absolutely. A lot of people love jazz musicians, and jazz musicians are known for being able to improvise beautifully. But we don't see the hours a day they're putting in practicing their scales. Same thing is with your scripting. I say, what's the lifetime value of your customer? It could be $250, it could be $250,000. You cannot be winging it with them. And once you become the script, so it's a part of you, it actually enables you to listen better. You can actually listen better and serve the client better. I say it's not a hard sell, it's a heart sell. But the thing is, just like with your BCS, B plus C plus S formula, it is a process. When you're process driven, you can always improve your process. And when you start looking, okay, what worked, what didn't work, because that takes all the blame out of it. Some people say, oh my gosh, it was horrible. Oh, I'm a bad salesperson. No, let's break down what you said and figure out, well, was it working or was it not working? Your entire presentation can hinge on one word. It's that important. The thing is, it's not to freak you out and to paralyze you. One of my clients owns 15 retirement communities, 12 on the West Coast, 3 on the East Coast. It's a $250,000 entrance fee. It's like a landlocked cruise ship. It's like, well, if I were 65, I'd love to live here. Plus, it's another $2,000 to $4,000 a month as long as they live there. Well, their salespeople were in their mid-20s, maybe early 30s, and they're talking people literally old enough to be their grandparents. So I mystery shopped, we scripted everything out. They now have a 90% occupancy rate across all of their properties. That's extremely high in the industry, and they're actually structured as a nonprofit. They're running circles around their for-profit competitors because we've scripted everything out. Same thing for the business owners, whether yourself as a solopreneur or you've got people on your sales team. It's too important to wing it. What's the lifetime value of a customer to your business? Frankly, you ask that, most business owners haven't really thought it through.
I would say 1 out of 5 at best actually has any data close to understanding that.
And then once you realize that, that's your opportunity cost lost. If your lifetime value of a customer is $5,000 or $2,000 and somebody only buys once and never comes back, there's 2 things. One, there's a breakdown in your marketing side of it, the B plus C plus S. There may be some, you'd analyze it from that perspective.
Right.
And I'd analyze, well, how was the interaction with the customer?
Right.
Was it even an upsell made? So many people in businesses are actually just order takers. They're not salespeople.
Right.
McDonald's, do you want fries with that? Is an upsell. It's an upsell.
Yeah.
What are you asking your clients for? Great, they bought once, hooray. But you know, if they buy more than one thing on the first visit, the probability of them staying with you for a lot longer is much higher.
Right.
They might, and refer you some friends. Most people even ask for referrals.
Yep.
Can you ask them? They aren't going to bite your head off. It's okay to ask.
Well, I guess it depends on who, but you're right.
Yeah,
they're not going to bite your head.
But this is an important thing, though, because 25% of people will give you referrals if you don't ask. 25% will never give you referrals. Like, no, I never refer. Okay.
Right.
50%, that means 50% of the people will ask.
Right.
We'll give you if you ask. I think it was Wharton. Wharton did a study a couple years ago. Usually Wharton and Harvard flip-flop. Who's number 1 in business? Sometimes it's Wharton, sometimes it's Harvard. They always flip-flop every year. But Wharton did a study. Referrals are 5 times more likely to buy from you. Don't you want to make it easier for you to make sales? So ask. It's okay.
It's interesting that you use McDonald's as an example a couple of times, because one of my favorite books, it's not as favorite as What Are Your Words Wearing or The Formula for Business Success equals B plus C plus S, but certainly in the realm, and that's Michael Gerber's The E-Myth.
All right.
And he uses McDonald's as an example, not that they have the best burgers in the world, but they have the best process in the world.
Right.
And that's why they're so successful, that they're actually, in essence, not selling burgers, they're selling franchises, because it's, you stamp that system on anybody and it's going to work. But going back to your book a little bit, I want to talk about your brand.
Okay.
And what are your words wearing? How did you come up with that particular title for your book?
Well, part of it is, if you want to take it from a scripting point of view, it's what's called a pattern interrupt. It gets people to stop and think. What are your words wearing? Huh? This is something that it took me a while to finally wrap my head around. I really resisted it. You think about a book. 50% of your success of your book is from the title and the cover. 25% is the back. People look at the cover, then they go to the back to read. And only 25% is the content. The thing is, the content is very important. I've structured it as a workbook. But the thing is, what are your words where I need to get you to stop and think? In retail, it's called stop, hold, close. You're walking past in the shopping mall. You look at the mannequins with a nice dress. You know, it's
the ones that are actually closed.
Right. It gets you to stop. It holds your attention. Ideally, it closes you by getting you to walk into the store. So that's what the title is. It stops you in your tracks. It's good. Back to the E-Myth with Michael Gerber. So many people, when they go, you think about going to a electronics store, kind of like a Best Buy, and you're looking at the giant screen TV, and the salesperson comes to you and says, "Can I help you?" 9 times out of 10, you say either "I'm just looking," or "I'm good." Bad script. Michael Gerber talks about using a pattern interrupt. Are you a new customer or a returning customer? It keeps the conversation going. Are you a new customer? That's very valuable information for the salesperson, and also the B plus C plus S formula. How are we, could we better get it right the first time, because if we don't, they probably aren't coming back.
Right.
I'm a returning customer. How long have you been a customer of ours? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, doesn't matter. That's great information. So now, well, what are some of the things you purchased in the past? Well, I've got the giant screen TV, but I don't have the surround sound.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the surround sound. And this newer version of the TV, the 4th generation, will actually have the best vision with the best, audio visual. Michael Gerber talks about that. So that's why it's so important with your language. As a business owner, if you're a solopreneur, your unofficial title is Chief Sales Officer.
Right.
You can't delegate it.
Well,
you have to train people who can help you do it. But if you can't do it and we can't model your process, it's going to be a really hard slog.
Well, even the best CEOs of thousands of employees think of themselves, if they're smart, as the chief sales officer. And it's interesting that you bring up that particular story from Michael Gerber, I should say, because I remember the tip in the book is that if you ask them, are you a new customer or a returning customer, if they say new, then the next statement is, well, we have a great program for new customers.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they're intrigued.
Right.
And if they say, well, I'm a returning customer, great, we have a loyalty program for returning customers. Now you actually have to have those programs in order to make that process work. But it's a great tip because it's an engagement right there.
Right.
One of the things that I always ask of practically all my guests is, because I get this quite a bit, which is, I appreciate that you wrote a book, I appreciate that you serve small businesses, but can you do me a solid and give me just 1 or 2 tips that I can take and I can implement in my business today that's going to help me? What's your 1 or 2 tips that you give small business owners?
You have to embrace a scripting culture. That's hands down. If you want better customers, you want more consistent customers, you have to embrace scripting. The second part is you have to be process driven. So what are my scripts that I'm working on now and using now, and how can I improve it? What are your results? Because with that, then you can constantly get better. But from a small business owner, now you don't have to try to get the superstar salespeople. You can hire for character, because I haven't found a way to teach character. Either they got it or they don't. And then here are the scripts that you need to follow, and you need to become the scripts. Once they have it, you can run circles around your competitors. You have a good B plus C plus S formula in place, and then you've got the sales team that is able to translate your brand drivers, your organizational, all those things that you talk about in your book in the everyday interactions with customers. One thing I would like to add,
please do.
You talk in your book about organizational drivers, and organizational history is key. Your organizational history are your testimonials, your success stories. The shortest distance between 2 people is not a straight line. It's a story. We are hardwired for stories. As kids, we probably said to our parents, hey, can you read me a story? Before written language was created, it was the oral tradition. That's how we are literally hardwired as humans to listen to stories. There's ways to make it more hypnotic. There's ways to make it more effective. So when you're going through your organizational drivers, your organizational history, you can mine that for very successful ways to interact with your customers. I'll give you an example of another way to use stories effectively. Mary Kay is no longer with us, but Mary Kay has an amazing story. And if it's done right, the Mary Kay rep tells the Mary Kay story first. And then her story why she joined Mary Kay. What happens? Mary Kay's amazing story. Mary Kay is still sprinkling magic fairy dust on the new Mary Kay rep. And then the Mary Kay rep says, here's why I joined Mary Kay. It's part of their process.
Right.
You've got that credibility because you are the face of your customer, of your business to your customer. And the stories are a very powerful way to convey on many different levels. Emotional, logical, there's many ways to make stories so much more hypnotic. Back to Michael Gerber, the entire book is a story.
Yes, it is.
It's an entire story.
Right. Yep.
And he's woven in some very powerful lessons. That's why he does it.
Well, speaking of Mary Kay, I may be looking for a new career. Do I have the look to sell Mary Kay?
There's so many successful Mary Kay reps who are men. And that's fine.
But they have hair.
Well, but the thing is, when you're using your scripts, then yes, you need to look professional. We're talking about congruency.
Right.
So if your words are pretty professional and selling language that matches how you're dressed, you're fine. One thing I would like to address to the audience members, if English is your second language, it's actually an advantage for scripting. Because it's going to force you to speak more directly.
Right.
And you need more simple sales language, simple sentences. Okay? You're conveying things in a very matter-of-fact way. Sometimes I work with my clients, English is their second language. Oh my gosh, John, I don't speak English very well. That's not the point. We use a more, do you want fries with that? Mm-hmm. Is that complicated? No. Millions of dollars to the bottom line.
Right, right. Well, you talked a lot about process and your great process. Mm-hmm. And the next step in my process is to thank you for an awesome interview.
Sure.
And a lot of great tips to our audience. Guys, pick up What Are Your Words Wearing? And John, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Ken.
So, what can we learn from John in the interview I had the pleasure to do? Well, as always, again, there's tons of things that we can learn. Other than, obviously, you probably want to grab a copy of John's book and rewatch the interview, because there's so much good content there. I could almost make a couple of shows out of it. But the number one thing, and this is the key element that I would like you to take from this particular episode, which is the process. And also knowing the difference in that process among branding, marketing, and sales. Just like marketing and sales are not the same thing, neither is branding and marketing or branding and sales, that they all need to work together. And in order to brand yourself properly, in order to truly brand the experience, we have to be very deliberate on not only what message we're sending via marketing, but also very deliberate and consistent about what we're saying in the sales process. John's system certainly helps people do that, and I encourage you to look at John's system, read John's system, and find ways to apply it in your unique business in order to brand the experience at a higher level. Thank you for spending some time with me today, and here's hoping that you're branding the experience at that high level. Take care.